Welcome to this video lecture of finite element analysis of beams. The basic purpose of this video is to let you know how to apply finite element method to the problems of beams. It is expected that the audience is familiar with the basic concepts of FEM. The development of finite element equations for beam is performed using variational principle. So what is variational principle? That we will see as we move ahead in this lecture. Before applying finite element method to the problems of beam, we will make certain assumptions which are as follows. The beam is loaded in y direction only, that is only transverse loading will be there. The deflection of beam is very small. So what do you mean by small deflection? That also we will see as we move ahead. The material of beam is homogeneous, linear, elastic and isotropic. Cross section of beam has an axis of symmetry in the plane of bending. Apart from these assumptions, there are certain assumptions like there will not be any axial loading in the beam. Also the effect of torsion will not be there. So before proceeding, we should make these assumptions clear. Now you are viewing a beam which is subjected to a uniformly distributed load, a concentrated force and a pure moment. As you know that the starting point in finite element method is to predict the behavior of field variable. Now what is meant by field variable? The basic unknown quantity that has to be determined is called field variable. For example, in structural problem, the field variable is often displacement. In heat transfer problem, the field variable is temperature. Since a beam is a flexure element, therefore, in order to satisfy compatibility requirements by displacement model, not only the displacement but also the slope continuity must be satisfied. Also, it is evident from the strain energy term which contains d2v by dx square, where v is vertical deflection of neutral axis from its undeformed position. Now, since the strain energy term of beam contains d2v by dx square, what is v? V is the vertical deflection of beam. So since this term contains d2v by dx square, we will take dv by dx, that is one order less than the term which appears in the strain energy expression. Here it is d2v by dx square, so one order less, it becomes dv by dx. So we will take this dv by dx also as a field variable. Now vertical deflection, no doubt it is a field variable. That is the basic unknown we want to decide. Once we decide this vertical deflection, we can then decide the derived quantities. And with this vertical deflection, we will also take dv by dx as a field variable. So this dv by dx is called slope, and vertical deflection, that is v. So v and theta, theta is nothing but dv by dx. These are the two field variables, these are the two basic unknowns that we will first consider before starting analysis of beam. Now it is clear that for beam the field variables are vertical deflection and slope. Now we have divided a beam into finite number of elements. Here you can see there are 5 elements: 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. The beam has been divided into 5 elements with 6 nodes. Now as we have seen that each node has 2 degrees of freedom, that is V and theta. So V1 is vertical deflection of node 1 and theta 1 is associated slope at node 1. Similarly, V2 theta 2 are vertical deflection and slopes at node number 2. V3 theta 3, V4 theta 4, V5 theta 5 and V6 theta 6 carry the same meaning. Now the complete continuous beam has been divided into 5 number of elements. So this is 5 element 6 node problem. This is just for example. Now consider single element number 1. Here it is shown as E1, having two local nodes, local node number 1 and local node number 2. These are not global node numberings as we have seen in last diagram. These are the local node numbers which are specific to element number 1. Here we place the coordinate system such that the x-axis runs along the length of element and node number 1, local node number 1 is selected as the origin. Therefore, if capital L is length of element, you can see that the variation of x is from 0 at local node number 1 to x is equal to L at local node number 2. We will now choose the displacement model for the beam element. Now what do you mean by choosing a displacement model for beam element? Suppose we know the displacement at node number 1 and displacement at node number 2. Now suppose if we are asked to find out displacement at this position. So what will be the magnitude of displacement at this position? So one choice may be like that the displacement varies linearly, the displacement varies quadratically, displacement varies cubically, or displacement varies with a polynomial of order n. Now we have to select what should be the displacement model for this beam element. So we have taken displacement model like this: v of x, displacement at any point is nothing but v. So v of x is equal to a0 plus a1x plus a2x square plus a3x cube. This is basically a cubic displacement model. Now why we have taken the cubic displacement model? The reason is that you can see there are 4 coefficients a0, a1, a2 and a3. So in order to find out the values of these 4 coefficients, we need at least 4 different equations. Now these 4 different equations can be obtained by applying boundary condition to this beam element. What are the boundary conditions? Displacement at node number 1, v of x at x is equal to 0, displacement at node number 2, v of x at x is equal to L, slope at node number 1, dv by dx at x is equal to 0, and slope at node number 2, dv by dx at x is equal to L. So these 4 different equations will be useful while calculating the coefficients A0, A1, A2 and A3. So this is one of the reason why we have chosen our displacement model as a cubic model. There are also certain reasons that we will come across as we will move ahead in these lectures that will again make it clear why the choice of displacement model is cubic for the beam element. So here you can see that this is our displacement model. It contains four coefficients A0, A1, A2 and A3. At the same time there are four boundary conditions: displacement at x is equal to 0, displacement at x is equal to L, slope at x is equal to 0 and slope at x is equal to L. So slope is nothing but dv by dx. So this is our displacement model. These are four boundary conditions. If we apply this boundary condition to this displacement model, we can easily find out the values of coefficients A0, A1, A2 and A3. So there will be four simultaneous equations and we have to solve these equations. So here A0 becomes V1. V1 is nothing but V at x is equal to 0. Why x is equal to 0? Because V at local node 1, V2 is nothing but this expression. What is V2? V2 is V evaluated at local node number 2. At local node number 2, x is equal to L. Theta 1 is equal to A1. Theta is what? dv by dx. So theta 1 becomes dv by dx at a point where x is equal to 0. Why x is equal to 0? Because we are calculating theta 1. So theta 1 is nothing but dv by dx at local node number 1 where x is equal to 0, and theta 2 becomes this equation. Again theta 2 means dv by dx at local node number 2 where x is equal to L. So from these four simultaneous equations we can easily find out the values of A0, A1, then A2 and A3. Now you can see the equation A, equation B, equation C and equation D represents the values of A0, A1, A2 and A3 respectively. If we substitute these values of A0, A1, A2 and A3 in our displacement model and collect the similar coefficients, means collect the coefficient of V1 theta 1 then V2 theta 2, we can write this expression. So this expression is similar to this expression. Here see here what I have written. First term is 1 minus 3x square by L square plus 2x cube by L cube into V1. Similarly, one term is written for theta 1, one term is written for V2, one term is written for theta 2. So I can rewrite this equation as V of x is equal to n1 of x V1 plus n2 of x theta 1 plus n3 of x V2 plus n4 of x theta 2. So in matrix form, I can rewrite this equation as V of x is equal to this n matrix into delta matrix. N matrix is nothing but this row matrix n1, n2, n3, n4, and delta matrix is nothing but this column matrix v1, theta 1, v2, theta 2. So I have written this V of x in the forms of product of two matrices n and delta. So this n matrix is nothing but a shape function matrix. In previous discussion, our coordinate system was a local coordinate system in which the x-axis used to run along the length of element, where at local node number 1 x was equal to 0, this is local node number 1, and at local node number 2 x was equal to L. So over the length of element, x used to vary from x is equal to 0 to x is equal to L. Now we will introduce a new coordinate system in terms of theta, where the origin of coordinate system is placed at the center of element. So on the extreme left side, that is at local node number 1, zeta is equal to -1, and at local node number 2, zeta is equal to +1. So as x vary from 0 to L, zeta varies from -1 to +1. So this new coordinate system of zeta is also called as a natural coordinate system. As a result, there will be a relation between x and zeta which can be easily found out from this expression. X is equal to LE by 2 into 1 plus zeta. LE is nothing but length of element, so here I have written it as L. So x is equal to L by 2 into 1 plus zeta, and therefore dx is equal to L by 2 into zeta. Now, since shape functions were expressed as function of x and we have found out a relation between x and zeta, now shape functions n1, n2, n3 are rewritten in terms of zeta. So these are the shape functions n1 of zeta, n2 of zeta, n3 of zeta, and n4 of zeta. Right now they are written in terms of zeta. So again I can write v is equal to n1 of zeta into v1 plus n2 of zeta into theta 1 plus n3 of zeta into v2 plus n4 of zeta into theta 2. So here v becomes n into delta. Now this n is a function of zeta. Previously the n was function of x. Now here this n is a function of zeta, and v is equal to n into delta, where n is the row matrix n1, n2, n3 and n4, and delta is a column matrix. Make it sure it is a column matrix. So I will write v1 theta 1 v2 theta 2 transpose. So it will be a column matrix. Let us find out strain energy absorbed by a beam when it is loaded with external forces. The figure shows a beam which is subjected to UDL, a concentrated force, and a moment. Now consider a very small beam element of length dx and having area dA. Basically, this is a three-dimensional beam element in which you can see its small length dx and area dA can be seen either from left or right hand side view. Now the volume of this very small beam element is given by dV. So from standard formula to find out strain energy, the strain energy absorbed by this small element is given by half stress into strain into volume, where volume is dV, which is given by dA into dx. So upon solving this equation, we can find the strain energy absorbed by this small element of beam is given by half m square y square upon I square into 1 by E into dA into dx, because you can easily recall this expression m by I is equal to sigma by y, where m, I, sigma and y carry their usual meaning. Therefore sigma, that is axial stress, can be represented as my upon I. This term y square dA, integral y square dA, is nothing but equal to I. So substituting this value, our strain energy term becomes UE, that is elemental strain energy, is given by integral over the length LE. LE is nothing but length of element. Since we are considering one single element, we are mentioning its length LE. So UE is equal to integral over the length LE half m square I upon EI square into dx. So further I can write it integral over the length L. Now this is a more generalized notation. Integral over the length L m square upon twice EI into dx. Again you are well aware about this equation. M is equal to EI into d2i d2v by dx square. So substituting this value of m, our strain energy, elemental strain energy becomes half EI in integral over the length LE d2v by dx square whole square dx. Note that the strain energy term contains this d2v by dx square term, as we have seen this in earlier also. We will now represent the strain energy of beam element in matrix notation. Now V of x is equal to n into q, matrix n into matrix q, where n is the shape function matrix, n1, n2, n3, n4, it is a row matrix, and q is nothing but v1, theta 1, v2, theta 2. Earlier we have represented this q as delta. Now onwards we will represent the column matrix, column vector v1, theta 1, v2, theta 2 as matrix q. Now dv by dx, first derivative of this v can be written as d by dx of product of these two matrices. So which is again written as dn by dx into q. Since n is a function of zeta and zeta and x has a linear relationship, I can write dn by dx equal to this dn by dx equal to dn by d zeta into d zeta by dx by chain rule. So this is further simplified as dv by dx is equal to 2 by le dn by d zeta into q. So you might be remembering this expression dx is equal to le by 2 d zeta. Then taking second derivative d2v by dx square, I can write this d2v by dx square as 4 by le square d2n by d zeta square into q. So taking square of this d2v by dx square, by you might be aware of the calculations of matrices, so it can be easily viewed that this d2v by dx square whole square is nothing but 16 by le raised to power 4 q transpose d2n by d zeta square transpose d2n by d zeta square into q. Now these are all matrices. This q transpose is a matrix. It will be a row matrix now because q is a column vector. So q transpose is nothing but a row vector. d2n by d zeta square transpose is again a column vector. d2n by d zeta square is again a row matrix, and this q is a column vector. So substituting this value of d2v by dx square in our strain energy term and further simplifying it, we can see that the strain energy terms finally becomes UE, that is elemental strain energy. Remember, we are considering strain energy for one single element, so it becomes half Q transpose in bracket this term into Q. So what is the term inside the bracket? This 8EI upon LE cube d2n by d zeta square transpose into d2n by d zeta square d zeta. This is the term, and the limits of integral are here from -1 to +1, right? Here this expression is similar to UE is equal to half Q transpose KE into Q. If you look at the strain energy stored by spring, how we write it? Half K into Q square, where Q is the displacement of spring. So this term is similar to the term that we use to represent strain energy stored by spring, half Q transpose Ke into Q, where the value of Ke is nothing but 8 EI upon L cube in integral -1 to +1 d2n by d zeta square transpose into d2n by d zeta square d zeta. This is the integral. Now d2n by d zeta square is nothing but a row vector whose dimension is 1 row 4 column, and d2n by d zeta square transpose will be a column vector whose dimensions are 4 rows and 1 column. So the product of this d2n by d zeta square transpose into d2n by d zeta square will be a 4 by 4 matrix, which is represented as this is what we are talking about. This is this matrix. This matrix is obtained by the product of these two matrices. So this is a matrix which has the dimension 4 by 4. And how did we obtain this matrix? Remember, this n is nothing but it represents shape functions. So n matrix represents shape functions n1, n2, n3 and n4, and all are represented as function of zeta, where zeta will vary from -1 to +1. That's why the limits of integral are here from -1 to +1, and this is the matrix. This is the matrix which is obtained by product of d2n by d zeta square transpose into d2n by d zeta square. If we perform the integration on all the elements of this matrix, where integral limits of the integral are from -1 to +1, we will obtain this matrix shown here. So this matrix is EI upon L cube into this 4 by 4 matrix. This 4 by 4 matrix. Just I will read this matrix: 12 6 Le minus 12 6 Le 6 Le 4 Le square minus 6 Le 2 Le square minus 12 minus 6 Le 12 minus 6 Le 6 Le 2 Le square minus 6 Le 4 Le square. There is one way to easily recall this matrix. Just concentrate how I read this matrix: 12 6 12 6 6 4 6 2 12 6 12 6 6 2 6 4, and negative signs are appearing in this third column and this third row, except at the place where this row and column intersect. So only this element is not negative, else complete third row is negative and complete third column is negative. So this is the way how you can recall this matrix. Now look at this term EI upon L cube. This term EI upon Le cube, try to find what is the unit of this term. E into I upon Le cube, the unit is Newton per meter or Newton per centimeter or Newton per mm, whatever is the system of unit. So this represents a unit of stiffness, force per unit deflection. One thing that I would like to mention here is that we could have represent this Ke matrix in terms of x also instead of in terms of zeta. But since we have changed our coordinate system from x to zeta, the integrals here appear in terms of function of zeta and not function of x. So this is one of the reason why this integration is has become simpler and less time consuming, because these integrals contains square of zeta, cube of zeta, and we can easily find out integral of zeta square is 2 by 3 within the limits minus 1 to plus 1. Integral of zeta within the limit minus 1 to plus 1 is 0, and integral of d zeta within the limits minus 1 to plus 1 is equal to 2. So by choosing this coordinate system, natural coordinate system of zeta, the integration has been simplified. So this is one of the reasons why we have changed our coordinate system from x to zeta. Otherwise you can also keep this local coordinate system, which is represented by x as it is. In that case your ke matrix would have been represented in terms of x rather than in terms of zeta. So ultimately the result is same. So whatever coordinate system is you choose, your stiffness matrix is not going to vary. That is the only the purpose of choosing natural coordinate system is to only simplify the calculations. Let us try to formulate consistent load vectors for beam. Now consider a very small portion of beam which is subjected to uniformly distributed load of intensity P Newton per mm. This is not complete beam element, but rather it is a very small portion of one single beam element. Now the work potential because of this UDL, you might be knowing work potential is nothing but the product of force and displacement of the node or the point where that force appears. So if I try to calculate the work potential due to this uniformly distributed load, it will be like this. If intensity of UDL is P, and if the length of this element, length of this small element is dx, so total force acting on this small element will be P into dx. And if we consider this length, if we consider this length sufficiently small, then we can assume that the deflection of this length, deflection of this length is v, provided that the length of this element is very small. So minus p into dx, minus p into dx into v will be the work potential because of this UDL. So I can write this work potential as minus p into v into dx. So this is for very small length of beam, very small fraction of length of beam. So for complete beam, if you want to find out work potential for complete beam element, so you have to integrate this work potential. So it becomes integral 0 to LE, where again LE is the length of element, minus p into dv into dx. Now I will change the limits of integral from x to zeta. From x will vary from 0 to LE, so zeta will vary from minus 1 to plus 1. So that work potential becomes integral minus 1 to plus 1 minus pv into LE by 2 d zeta, because dx is equal to LE by 2 d zeta. Upon solving, we can find out this work potential becomes uh, integral minus 1 to plus 1 minus p LE by 2 into v d zeta. So again the intensity of UDL is assumed to be constant, length is constant, so I will take it outside this integral, and inside integral this v will be represented as nq. So this work potential becomes minus p LE by 2 minus 1 to plus 1, these are the limits of integration, and this integration has to be performed on product of these two matrices n into q. So again q has to be taken outside because it is low displacement vector, so I will take it outside the integrals, and this work potential becomes P Le by 2 in integral from -1 to +1 n d zeta, where n is nothing but a row matrix, n1, n2, n3, n4, and this q is a column vector v1, theta 1, v2, theta 2. So upon solving and finally representing the entire work potential in matrix form, we can write the work potential is a product of two matrices. This is first matrix, this is a second matrix. The first matrix is a row matrix and the second one is a column vector. So this first matrix is nothing but P Le by 2 P Le square by 10 P Le by 2 P Le square minus P Le square by 12. So how did we obtain this matrix? By performing integral on each and every element of this n matrix. And this is the final expression that can be verified, that work potential is product of this matrix and this vector. So here again I am writing this work potential as a product of two matrices. Now this matrix is somewhat like nodal force vectors. Uh, See this term P Le by 2 has a unit Newton per mm into mm, or Newton per meter into meter, which is equal to Newton. So the unit of this first term is Newton and unit of this another term is Newton mm. So obviously this term represents nodal force and this term represents nodal moment. Same is with these remaining two terms. In fact, these first two terms are designated for local node 1 of the beam element, local node 1, and these last two terms, they are specific to local node number 2. So force, moment. This is the composition of this vector. So ultimately what we have done, we have broken down this UDL into two parts, or rather I say we have changed this UDL into nodal forces. Each node will be subjected to one concentrated force in newtons and one pure moment in Newton meters, or whatever be the system of units. Call it as a Newton meter, Newton mm, or Newton centimeter. So that depends upon what type of system of units you are using. So just I want to say that we have broken down this UDL into nodal forces, which are comprised of force and moments. Here work potential is again rewritten like Q transpose into Fe, where Q transpose is nothing but it's a row vector now, because Q is a column vector, so Q transpose will be a row vector, and this matrix is written Fe. The matrix Fe is like this: column vector PLE by 2, PLE square by 12, PLE by 2 minus PLE square by 12. So as I explained earlier, these first two terms are specific to local node number 1, and this third and fourth term, last two terms, are specific to local node number 2. So again, this is only the way I have changed the way of writing the work potential. Rest of the things are same. So here again you can see the UDL has been broken into two parts: force movement, force movement. F1 M1 corresponds to force and movement for local node number 1, and F2 M2 corresponds to force and movements for local node number 2. Now this is total potential energy of one single beam element, and the suffix e denotes it is for element. So pi e is nothing but elemental total potential energy. so which is equal to strain energy and work potential, strain energy and work potential, and it is again written like this, half q transpose keq minus minus q transpose into fe. So this is a very fundamental equation in finite element method of structural problems. Here this pi is nothing but total potential energy, which is a functional, I repeat, which is a functional, I am using the word functional, not function. A functional may be called as function of a function, and this functional total potential energy plays a very significant role in formulation of finite element equations. So elemental potential energy is equal to half q transpose keq minus q transpose into fe, where see the notations are like this: k is elemental stiffness matrix, q is elemental displacement vector, or local displacement vector, or call it as a local nodal displacement vector, and fe is elemental force vector, or sometimes it is called elemental load vector. So these are terms which are frequently used, ke, q and fe, which are very important terms. Before proceeding further, I would like to mention here, initially we have started by choosing a displacement model for field variable. So our displacement model was cubic displacement model. Why we have chosen cubic displacement model? Because one reason I have told that the cubic displacement model contains four constants, four coefficients a0, a1, a2 and a3, and there were four boundary conditions. So four coefficients and four equations. So that was one of the thing why we have chosen cubic displacement model. Another thing is that since we have broken down, now listen carefully, since we have broken down this UDL into nodal forces and nodal moments are not shown here. We have broken down this UDL into nodal forces uh, between two nodes. See, there are no any forces between these two nodes. Only forces are appearing on the nodes. So here the bending moment will vary linearly between these two nodes. Suppose the intensity of bending moment is this much at this node, and it is the intensity of bending moment is this much at this node. So because of presence of these two nodal forces, the variation of bending moment will be linear. Now how you get bending moment? M is equal to EI into d2v by dx square. Remember, d2v by dx square. So if v is cubic, d2v by dx square, which represents the bending moment, it would be linear. So here it is verified. The change of bending moment is linear because of the consistent load vector formation. What is consistent load vector formation? Breaking this UDL into two nodal forces, one at local node number 2, another at local node number 1. So because of this breakdown, the bending moment shall vary linearly, and bending moment is given by d2v by dx square. So if my displacement model is cubic, what will happen? d2v by dx square will be linear. So this is again one of the reason, or rather I shall say this is one of the justification why we have chosen a cubic displacement model. So till now, what we have done, initially we had a problem in which complete beam was loaded with certain forces, external loads, and later we have subdivided this beam into finite number of elements. So here for the example, we have divided this beam into 5 different elements and having 6 nodes, and each node is having 2 degrees of freedom, v and theta, deflection and slope. Later on, what we did, we have formulated the equation for elemental potential energy. So what is elemental potential energy? Potential energy of one single element. So there are five different elements. Consider any one element. Suppose in our example, our discussion, we have considered element number one. So potential energy of element number one under external loading is given by half Q transpose KEQ minus Q transpose FE. So when I am using this Q, so I am writing small q. Small q denotes local degrees of freedom. Here the numbering, let me make it very clear. Here the numbering 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 are global numbering. Consider element number 5. So what are the two nodes of element number 5? 5, node number 5 and node number 6, but these are the global node numberings. Remember, every element has only two local nodes. For beam, I am talking about beam. Every element has two local nodes which are always denoted by local node number 1 and local node number 2 irrespective of its position. So element number 4, I have global node numbers 4 and 5, but its local node numbers will be 1 and 2 only. So when I am using this small q, when I am using this small q, I am talking about local degrees of freedom, local schema. I am talking about local schema. Okay, so till now what we have done, I will just recall briefly, summarize briefly. Initially, the problem of beam was specified. We have broken down that problem into finite number of elements, and we have formulated the equation of potential energy of one single element. Now, how will you get the total potential energy for this complete beam? I am speaking about this complete beam. So easily it can be obtained by summation of elemental potential energy. So sum of potential energy of element number 1 to element number 5 will give the total potential energy of this beam. So in uh, mathematical form, I can write pi is equal to summation pi e for n elements, where n is the number of elements in which you have divided the problem. Here it is 5. So now recall this again. Equation for pi is same, half q transpose kq minus q transpose f. Now here I am using capital Q. It indicates that I am now referring to global degrees of freedom, means this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and k e has changed to k. This K is called as a global stiffness matrix. It can be assembled from different local stiffness matrices. So what are the terms in total potential energy of domain, not domain, total potential energy of complete beam? Q stands for global nodal displacement vector, as I explained earlier. K stands, remember I am using K not KE. K stands for global stiffness matrix and F is a global load vector. Now before start of this video, I have told that the audience or the viewer should go through the basic terminologies, means how to assemble the local stiffness matrices into global stiffness matrix, how to assemble nodal load vector or nodal force vector into global load vector, how to formulate global nodal displacement vector from the elemental displacement vector. So I assume that the viewer is well aware with this all techniques for the assembly of stiffness matrices and displacement and load vectors. We have seen this equation of potential energy. Uh, Now I will apply principle of minimum potential energy. So you are all aware of what is principle of minimum potential energy. So setting first variance of this functional equal to 0. Now this potential energy is a function of displacement fields or the displacement configuration. Therefore, I will set del pi by del qi is equal to 0. This will give me set of equations which are also termed as equilibrium equations. How many equations will be obtained in our case? There will be 12 equations because there are 12 values of qi, q1 to q12, because 6 nodes are there and per node there are 2 degrees of freedom. So 6 into 2 is equal to 12. In matrix forms, these equations can be written as kq is equal to f. Remember, this is the last outcome of our exercise. K into q is equal to f. What is the unit of k? Newton per mm or Newton per meter, whatever be the system of unit. What is the unit of q? Mm. And what is the unit of f? It is Newton. So Newton per mm into mm is equal to Newton. So right hand side and left hand side are perfectly balanced. So this is the final expression which represent equilibrium of a structure correctly. This expression kq is equal to f, or the matrix notation of set of simultaneous equations, can be solved by using either penalty approach or elimination approach. So if you want to perform hand calculations, then penalty approach is a good choice. But if you want to implement this code into computer programs, so it will be dealt very easily with the penalty approach. So elimination approach is preferred where calculations are small, means number of nodes are lesser, and if the number of nodes are more, and if you want to go for computer programming, so penalty approach is a very good method. We have seen finite element formulation of beam, and I assume that we are having basic knowledge of how to assemble global stiffness matrix, how to assemble global load vector, what is meant by global nodal displacement vector, and related terms. Now we will solve a problem of beam. This is the problem given, you can see here. The first step that we will do is to divide the complete problem into number of sub-problems, or divide the complete domain into number of subdomains. Here, since this calculation done using pen and paper is very tedious task, we will prefer to choose less number of elements. So for the demonstration, I will divide this problem into two number of elements, element number 1 and element number 2. So how many degrees of freedom will be there? Total degrees of freedom: v1 theta 1, v2 theta 2, and v3 theta 3. So there are 6 degrees of freedom, 3 nodes, 6 degrees of freedom. uh, Now we will see uh, how to proceed. This is k1, local stiffness matrix for element number 1. Remember what is the formula: ei upon l cube, ei upon l cube, and this is the matrix. So here I will write E1 I1 upon L1 cube because I am dealing with the element number 1. And see, here I have written V1 theta 1, V2 theta 2. These are the global degrees of freedom associated with the element number 1. Element number 1 has global degrees of freedom V1 and theta 1 for node number 1, and V2 and theta 2 for node number 2. So upon solving, I will get this matrix. K1 is equal to this matrix. Since this K represents stiffness of element, and since both the elements are exactly identical, you can see it from the problem. This K2, that is stiffness matrix for element number 2, is exactly identical to that of element number 1. So K2 is equal to K1. One thing that I want to make it clear, very clear, that what I have written here, V2 theta 2, V3 theta 3. So these are nothing but the global degrees of freedom associated with the element number 2. What are the global? I am using word global. What are the global degrees of freedom? V2 theta 2, V3 theta 3. So these degrees of freedom are written here. Again, one thing, keep in mind that whatever the sign conventions adopted while using finite element analysis are also shown here. You can see it from here. Uh, Vertical direction for V is taken as positive, and anti-clockwise sense of theta, anti-clockwise rotation of theta is taken as positive. These conventions are totally different from those we used to study in strength of material. So these are the conventions. Vertically upward V1 is positive, and anti-clockwise sense of rotation of theta is taken as positive. So make it very clear. We have assembled global stiffness matrix. This is global stiffness matrix K from two local stiffness matrices whose dimension is 6 by 6. The dimension of this global stiffness matrix is 6 by 6 because there are 6 degrees of freedom in problem. 3 nodes per node, 2 degrees of freedom. So 3 into 2 is equal to 6. So this K global stiffness matrix has dimension 6 by 6. Again, you can see global displacement vector, which is Q1, Q2, capital Q1, capital Q2, Q3, Q4, Q5, Q6 transpose. It is same as this vector v1 theta 1, v2 theta 2, v3 theta 3 transpose. Only way of writing has been changed. Rest of the things are same. These two vectors are same. Uh, One more thing, elemental load vector for element number 1. What is elemental load vector? So you might be remembering we have broken the UDL into a point load and moment at local node number 1 and local node number 2 for each element. So that vector is again repeated here. Since P intensity of UDL, remember this intensity of UDL for both the elements, element number 1 and 2 is 0. So this vector, call it as a F1 vector for sake of understanding. So this F1, that is elemental load vector for element number 1 due to uniformly distributed load is 0 because P is 0 here. So F1 is equal to 0, and this F2 elemental load vector for element number 2, since element number 2 is not also having any UDL acting on it, so F2 has to be 0. Please don't get confused with the notation. You can use either F1 or any other notation. For sake of understanding, I have used this F1 notation. So what is F1? F1 is elemental load vector. Many authors call this as a local load vector, but this elemental load vector is more correct. So these elemental load vectors, because of UDL for element number 1 and 2 are 0. Now the equation was KQ is equal to F. So K we have seen, this is K. Q we have seen, this is Q, and the load vector due to UDL is 0. So what is the value of F vector in equation KQ is equal to F? So because of point load, remember there is a point load acting at center of span in vertically downward direction, and due to this point load there will be deflection of beam. So this F vector, don't get confused this F with F1 and F2 here. This F represents the global load vector because of direct point load, because of direct point load and direct movements. So what is the point load at node number 1? 0. What is the movement at node number 1? 0. What is the point load at node number 2? Minus 20 kilonewtons. What is the direct movement at node number 2? 0. What is the direct force and movements at node number 2? 0. So this vector is 0, 0, minus 20,000, 0, 0, 0. So this is the vector because of action of direct point load and direct movements, whereas this elemental load vector due to uniformly distributed load was written like this. We have derived this vector, and since for both the elements these these vectors are 0, f1 and f2 are 0, so the UDL is not going to contribute any in the global load vectors. We have applied here the elimination approach. So what are the boundary conditions? Left end is fixed, therefore slope and deflection there are 0, hence v1 is equal to 0, v1 is equal to 0, theta 1 is equal to 0, and right end was roller supported, therefore only deflection, vertical deflection at that support is block, therefore v3 is equal to 0. So rows and column corresponding to v1 theta 1 v3 have been cancelled. See here, you can see the rows and columns corresponding to v1 theta 1 v3 are cancelled. Upon imposing the elimination approach, we get this reduced matrix. This is called a reduced matrix, which is a 3 by 3 matrix. So this equation represents three simultaneous set of equations. This matrix, no, this reduced matrix into this vector, this reduced matrix into this vector is equal to this vector. It represents three simultaneous equations, and upon solving these simultaneous equations, here we get V2 is equal to minus 3.6458 centimeter. Why centimeter? Because all the dimensions, all forces were treated in Newton and all linear dimensions were treated in centimeters. So unit of V2 is centimeter. Theta 2 and theta 3 have units radians because theta represents slope. So what is slope? Tan of theta. But if theta is very small, tan of theta is nearly equal to theta, and which has the unit radians. Remember, this is very important. We have to represent this theta in radians. Now to find shear force at node number 1 and 3, simply we will find what is the vertical reaction at node number 1. If R1 is the vertical reaction at node number 1, same will be the shear force. So I hope that you are all aware how to find reactions, because uh, it is assumed that you all know the basic way how the finite element method works. So remember this first row was cancelled. So I am using the same row k11, k12, k13, k14, k15, k16. This is the row vector into this column vector minus f1. F1 is the first element in the global load vector. So this expression will give me the reaction R1, and it comes out to be this much. Similarly, we can calculate R3, that is vertical reaction at node number 3, which is same as shear force, magnitude of shear force at node number 3, that is roller support, is equal to R3. In the exactly same way, we will calculate this R3. So R3 comes out to be plus 6250 Newton, and you can easily verify that this summation R1 plus R3 is equal to 20 kilonewton, but in upward direction, which is equal to point load, which is present at center of span. Now we will find out bending moments at node number 1, 2 and 3. So for finding out bending moment at node number 1, we will take into consideration the second row which has been cancelled. So if you are familiar with how to calculate the reactions, you can easily understand this equation. So this second row K2J means K21, K22, K23 like this. This row can be used to calculate the bending moment. This M1 stands for directly applied moment, pure moment which are externally applied, and this MR1 is a reaction moment, right? So this MR1, this reaction moment comes out to be plus 3750 Newton centimeters. So if you know how to calculate reactions in the elimination approach, you can easily understand this how I have written these equations. Now we will calculate bending moment at node number 2. If you look at the global stiffness matrix, the row corresponding to bending moment 2, that is theta 2, row corresponding to theta 2 is fourth row, is a fourth row which has not been cancelled. And now if the row has not been cancelled, we cannot use it in the way we have used it previously. So this is the way how I will proceed to calculate bending moment. This M bending moment is equal to EI into d2v by dx square. So again simplifying, I can write this bending moment is equal to this expression which involves d2n by d zeta square uh, and into delta. Delta is nothing but q, v1 theta 2 over the 1 v2 theta 2. But now I will consider this node number 2 is shared by both the elements. You can select either element for the analysis. I have chosen this element number 1, and this node number 2, global node number 2, is again the local node number 2 for element number 1. What I have said, this global node number 2 is again the local node number 2 for element number 1. Therefore, uh, for element number 1, local node number 2, zeta is equal to plus 1. And substituting this value of zeta is equal to plus 1 in d2n by d zeta square, where n is the shape function matrix n1, n2, n3, n4, and the shape functions n1, n2, n3, n4 are represented as a function of zeta. So calculating this d2 zeta, d2n by d zeta square and substituting zeta is equal to plus 1. Why plus 1? Because we are dealing with local node number 2 of element number 1. So for element number 1, local node number 2 is also global node number 2. So if we simplify this expression, or if we calculate this product of two matrices, we can easily obtain bending moment M at node number 2, and this comes out to be this much. In the exactly same way, we can calculate bending moment at node number 3. So for analysis, I have chosen element number 2. So global node number 3 is local node number 2 for element 2. Again I repeat, global node number 3 is local node number 2 for element 2. So if it is local node number 2, again I have to use zeta is equal to plus 1, and this expression we have seen it earlier. Again, by substituting zeta is equal to 1 into this d2n by d zeta square, where n1, n2, n3 are known functions of zeta, we have already seen it. This m comes out to be this much. It is very small in magnitude, so better way, as I also know what is the geometry of loading and what type of loading to which beam is subjected, I will consider it as a 0, because this is very small, so I can neglect it. Here you can see the summary of our results. This diagram is self-explanatory. So here you can see the shear force and bending moment diagram for a beam. Please note that we have used the sign conventions for constructing SFD and BMP from the strength of material theory. And kindly note that whatever sign conventions we have used for representing force and moments in our finite element method are different than the sign conventions those we have learned in strength of material. Here I have used the strength of material sign conventions for construction of SFD and BMP. I hope you have understood how to apply finite element method for the problems of beam. This was a really simple problems. In actual practice, the problems of beams are very complex problems. So if you combine this finite element method with a computer program, or you directly use any FEA software, you can solve these complex problems by this finite element method. So this was the brief summary and brief demonstration how to apply finite element method for a beam. Thank you very much.